I took my daughter-in-law's broken phone to get it fixed, but after checking it, the technician pulled me aside and whispered, "Ma'am, you need to cancel your cards, change every password, and leave this place immediately." When I asked what was going on, he turned the phone screen toward me, and what I saw made my blood turn cold. But before I continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. My name is Susan Miller, 65 years old, and until 3 days ago, I thought I had a normal, happy life. I live in a quiet little house in the suburbs of Dallas with my husband, Robert, who's 67. We both retired not long ago. I used to be a history teacher, and he was an engineer. We have one son, Michael, who got married 5 years ago to Emily. I always liked my daughter-in-law. She graduated with a degree in business administration, was smart, beautiful, and worked for a major financial consulting firm. Michael met Emily at a friend's party, and they married in less than a year. I always thought Emily seemed a bit distant, but I assumed it was because of her demanding job and quiet nature. Everything began last Wednesday when Emily came to visit me alone, which was unusual since they usually visited together on weekends. She looked rushed and said her phone was broken and needed to be fixed right away. "The screen's completely shattered," she explained. "I dropped it by accident, and I really need it working today. I've got an important meeting tomorrow, and with Michael out of town, I don't know where to take it." By coincidence, I had just taken my own phone to a small repair shop downtown the week before. The owner, Tom, was the son of an old colleague of mine from my teaching days. I immediately offered to help. "Thank you, Mom, you're saving me," Emily said, handing me the phone. "The password's 2800218, our wedding date. I have to go to the office this afternoon, but I'll stop by tonight to pick it up, okay?" I nodded. I drove to Tom's shop, a small place tucked between a pharmacy and a bakery, with a sign that read, "Fast Phone Repair." When I walked in, Tom was bent over his workbench, surrounded by tiny parts and tools. "Hi, Susan, it's great to see you again," he said with a smile. I explained the situation, and Tom said he could fix the phone in a few hours. I left it with him, gave him the password, and went shopping. That afternoon, when I returned, Tom was alone. The moment he saw me, his face changed, his cheerful expression disappeared, replaced by worry. He glanced at the door, then whispered, "The phone's fixed. But I need to show you something." I frowned. "Is there a problem?" "Not with the phone," he said quietly. "You need to cancel your cards, change your passwords, and get out of your house right away." A chill ran down my spine. "What are you talking about, Tom?" He motioned for me to come closer, opened Emily's phone, and went to the messages. In the Notes app, a note titled Plan B was open, and he turned the screen toward me. I froze. It was a note containing copied message threads between Michael and Emily, laying out step by step a plan to end my life. "Mom's getting more forgetful," Michael had written. "This is the perfect time. The doctor's documenting it, just like I asked. No one will suspect anything when it happens." Emily's reply made me sick. "Your parents' life insurance is worth almost $2 million. Once we sell the house, we'll have enough to start over somewhere new." I was trembling, gripping the counter to keep from falling. "No, this can't be real," I whispered. Tom explained that he hadn't meant to snoop, but when he tested the phone after fixing it, a notification appeared, and what he saw was impossible to ignore. My heart pounded as I scrolled through the rest. They discussed the method, the timing, how to stage the scene as a domestic accident. There were even notes about medications and amounts that could be lethal to someone with my condition. "Robert too," I whispered, barely breathing. "The messages showed they planned to kill my husband afterward. It has to be a few weeks apart," Michael wrote. "If both die at once, it'll look suspicious." Tom locked the shop door, flipped the sign to closed, poured me a glass of water, and helped me sit down. "You need to go to the police," he said. I shook my head, still in shock. No one will believe me. Just an old woman's word against her son and daughter-in-law, 2 people everyone in the neighborhood respects. "Then you need to protect yourself and gather evidence," he insisted. I nodded, my hands trembling. I took my phone and photographed every message, carefully capturing dates, times, and every detail of their plan, including how they were manipulating our family doctor to falsify medical records about my supposed memory loss. "I need you to restore her phone exactly as it was," I told him. "No signs it's been tampered with." He agreed. After about an hour, Emily's phone looked completely normal. When I stepped out of the shop, it felt like I was walking through a nightmare. The Dallas sky had never looked so gray. How could I go home now? How could I look at Robert without breaking down, knowing our only son wanted us both dead? I drove back with my mind spinning. I had to warn Robert without scaring him, and we needed to act carefully. If Michael and Emily suspected anything, they might change their plan or strike sooner. The feeling of betrayal was unbearable. The boy I had given birth to, raised, comforted through every heartbreak, was plotting to murder me for money. I stopped in front of our house and took a deep breath. I had to stay calm. This was a fight for survival, and I needed to be smarter than the two of them thought I was. They saw me as a frail, forgetful old woman, easy prey, but they didn't know I'd spent years teaching during tough times, raising a child alone while Robert worked out of state, surviving breast cancer. If they thought I would go down quietly, they were dead wrong. I gripped the phone like a bomb and walked inside. Robert was sitting on the couch, watching the news as usual. His gentle face and silver hair made my eyes sting with tears, but I held them back. "Did you get Emily's phone fixed?" he asked, without looking away from the TV. I swallowed hard. Yes, all done. I had to tell him, but I didn't know how. How do you tell the man you've shared 45 years of marriage with that your only son wants to kill you both? "Robert," I said, my voice tighter than I expected, "you need to see this. It's serious." He turned off the TV immediately and faced me. "What's going on, Susan?" I sat beside him, opened my phone, and showed him the screenshots. I saw it all on his face: confusion, disbelief, fear, and finally a deep pain that made me think he might collapse. "No way. Michael wouldn't," he whispered. "I thought the same," I said, holding his hand. "But that's his number, his writing. And Emily's replies are from her phone, the one right here." Robert closed his eyes, taking deep breaths. When he opened them again, his gaze had changed, steady, determined. "What do we do now?" he asked. I laid out the plan. Document everything. Check our bank accounts. Change passwords. Cancel cards. And find out which doctor was involved. We had to act normal while quietly gathering enough proof to go to the police when the time came. "Emily's coming tonight to pick up the phone," I said. "We have to stay calm." "How can I look at her and not explode?" Robert muttered. I tried to smile, though my lips trembled. "One step at a time, Robert. Our lives depend on it." We spent the next hour reviewing our online bank statements and found something alarming. Small withdrawals every week for the past 3 months, $700, $800 each time, totaling nearly $10,000. "Michael has access to our account, remember?" Robert said quietly. "We gave him power of attorney last year, just in case something happened." Bitterness rose in my throat. We had trusted him so completely that we'd handed him the tools to destroy us. We changed every password, canceled any card he could touch, and told the bank to block large transfers unless Robert and I approved them in person. "What about the doctor?" Robert asked. Dr. Parker had been our physician for over 15 years and was a close friend who often joined us for dinner. The thought that he might be falsifying medical records at our son's request hurt as deeply as Michael's betrayal. "I'll make an appointment with him tomorrow," I said. "I want to see what he has to say about my so-called memory loss." When the doorbell rang, Robert squeezed my hand. We looked at each other, a silent promise to stick to the plan. I forced a smile as I opened the door. Emily stood there, elegant as ever, with her wavy brown hair and perfectly pressed outfit. But now, that polished look felt like a mask hiding the truth beneath. "Susan, sorry for coming so late. Was the repair okay?" she asked. "All done," I replied, handing her the phone. "Tom did a great job. It looks brand new." She turned it on, checked it, then smiled. "Perfect. Let me pay you back." No need, I said quickly. Tom fixed it for free, long-time customer. She froze for a second, her brow tightening with a flicker of worry. Did she suspect the technician had seen something? Are you sure? I don't want to trouble anyone. It's fine, dear. Would you like to come in for some tea? Robert's watching TV. I can't, I've got an early presentation tomorrow. She avoided my eyes as she spoke, voice calm but gaze uneasy. Now that I knew what to look for, every small gesture seemed like a clue. I understand, I said softly. When's Michael coming back? Tomorrow night, she answered too quickly. Another lie. I already knew from the messages he was home, waiting for her report. Tell him to stop by, we haven't seen him in 2 weeks. Of course, Emily smiled, slipping the phone into her purse. He misses you both too. Oh, by the way, have you seen the memory specialist Michael recommended? My stomach tightened, though I kept my face composed. Not yet, no time. Michael says, you've been forgetting things lately, names, appointments. Is that true? I smiled lightly. My memory's fine. In fact, I remember exactly when you wore that outfit at my cousin's birthday party last month. A flicker of surprise crossed her eyes before she forced a stiff smile. Still, a checkup never hurts, especially at your age. You're right, I'll schedule it soon. When the door closed, I leaned against it, exhausted from pretending to be calm. Robert was waiting in the living room, his face tense. Did she say anything? She tried planting the idea that I'm forgetful, I said, sitting down. They're setting up the story ahead of time. What now? We act, I said firmly, feeling determination replace fear. Tomorrow I'll see Dr. Parker. Then I'll check the life insurance policy. We need to know what Michael's changed. After that, we'll set our own trap. That night, I barely slept. Every creak in the house made me jump. I got up 3 times to check the locks, and the last time, I found Robert in the kitchen, drinking water, eyes heavy with sadness. I keep thinking about Michael as a kid, he whispered. He used to be scared of the dark. Whenever there was a storm, he'd crawl into our bed. Where did that little boy go, Susan? I couldn't answer. How does a child once so full of love turn into someone so cold and calculating? We'll find out, I said, hugging him, and we'll survive this. The next morning, I called Dr. Parker's office, saying it was urgent. They fit me in for a late morning appointment. Before leaving the house, we checked our accounts again and discovered something even worse. A new life insurance policy under my name had been opened 3 months earlier without my knowledge. What is this? I gasped. Robert scrolled through the electronic document. Look at this, your signature. I leaned closer, stunned. That's not my signature. They forged it. And the payout amount is $1.5 million, Robert said quietly. Michael's listed as the sole beneficiary. My body went cold. It had gone far beyond a plan, documents forged, money siphoned, the doctor manipulated, and now a policy waiting to cash in once I died, accidentally. I left the house, my heart pounding. The appointment with Dr. Parker would decide everything. I had to find out how deep his involvement ran. The clinic was calm. The receptionist smiled politely. Good morning, Mrs. Miller. The doctor will see you now. When I stepped inside, Dr. Parker, a middle-aged man with graying hair who had always been friendly, looked uneasy. Susan, this is a surprise. Michael called me yesterday. He said you didn't want to take the cognitive test. I sat down, keeping my tone steady. That's strange, I said. Because I'm the one who asked for this appointment. I heard Michael say you've been showing some concerning signs, forgetting names, mixing up dates. I smiled. Interesting, because I don't recall having any issues. He hesitated. Sometimes patients don't recognize their symptoms, especially in the early stages of dementia. In fact, you already have a preliminary diagnostic note. I raised an eyebrow. A diagnosis? Based on what? Michael showed me a few videos of you forgetting dates and people's names. Videos? I asked, startled. I want to see them. He didn't leave any copies. Dr. Parker, I interrupted, leaning toward him. I've been your patient for 15 years. Do you honestly believe I'm losing my mind? Or do you just believe my son? His silence said everything. He sighed. Michael came to see me several times, said you and Robert couldn't take care of yourselves anymore, and asked me to document any signs of cognitive decline. And you agreed. I only noted what he told me. I didn't make a formal diagnosis. I looked him straight in the eye. Doctor, my son is planning to kill me and my husband. His face turned pale. What? Susan, that's a very serious accusation. I have proof. Now I understand why he needed your help to create medical records that would make my death look natural. His hands shook as he adjusted his glasses. I had no idea. I thought he truly cared about you. I took out my phone and showed him the screenshots. As he read, his expression changed from confusion to horror. Good Lord, I didn't know any of this. I want to see my medical records right now, I said. He opened his computer and turned the screen toward me. It read, "Patient shows signs of cognitive decline as reported by her son. Frequent confusion, disorientation, forgetfulness of names and recent events. Recommended comprehensive neurological evaluation." My voice was cold. This is fabricated. And you know it. I only documented what he said, no conclusions. But you created a record that could be used against me, a perfect cover for murder. He lowered his head, voice trembling. What do you want me to do? Print that record and sign it. Then create a new one stating that you examined me today and found no signs of cognitive impairment. He agreed immediately, still shaken. And doctor, I added as he typed, if anything happens to me or Robert, this record and our conversation today will be the first evidence the police review. I left the clinic holding the printed documents, clear proof of the conspiracy against us. Dr. Parker had been manipulated by Michael, and his carelessness had nearly cost us our lives. I drove straight to the bank to check our accounts and revoke every authorization Michael had. The branch manager, Mr. Martin, who had managed our accounts for years, looked surprised by my request. Are you sure, Mrs. Miller? Your son was just here last week. He said you both wanted to extend his authority so he could handle your finances more easily since Mr. Robert's been unwell. Another lie. Robert was perfectly healthy. My husband is just fine, Mr. Martin, and yes, I'm sure. I'd like to review all transactions from the past 6 months. We spent nearly an hour going over the statements. Besides the small withdrawals, something far worse emerged. Michael had requested a replacement credit card in Robert's name, claiming he'd lost it. We issued a new one, Martin said quietly, sounding regretful, because he had power of attorney and usually handled your finances. I took a deep breath to steady myself. Cancel that card immediately, and block any future card requests unless we're both present. When I left the bank, I felt both relieved for having stopped part of Michael's scheme and horrified by how elaborate it was. He had set everything up to make our deaths look natural while gaining full control of our assets. On the way home, my phone rang. It was him. My heart pounded, but I forced my voice to stay calm. Hi, son. Hi, Mom. Are you okay? I just got back. Emily said you took her phone to get it fixed. That's sweet of you. His voice was calm, casual, chillingly so. I knew he hadn't gone anywhere. It's nothing, sweetheart. The technician's the son of an old colleague of mine. He gave me a great deal. Nice. Hey, Emily and I were thinking of coming over for dinner tonight. It's been a while since we all ate together, hasn't it? A cold shiver ran down my back. Why the sudden visit? Had they found out something? Or had Dr. Parker called him after our appointment this morning? Of course, I said, keeping my tone light. I'll make your favorite lasagna. Perfect, Mom. Oh, by the way, he added, did you see that doctor I recommended? Emily said you hadn't gone yet. Yes, I did. I saw Dr. Parker this morning. Silence. And what did he say? Nothing serious. Just ran a few simple tests, said my memory's perfectly fine. Another long pause. That's good. But maybe you should get a second opinion, you know? Dr. Parker can be overly cautious sometimes. I'll think about it, son. See you tonight? Around 7 p.m., Mom. See you then. I hung up, my hands shaking. A seemingly normal conversation, yet full of hidden tension. Michael had clearly expected the doctor to confirm my supposed memory issues, and when he heard the opposite, he grew uncertain. The sudden dinner invitation was no coincidence. It was either to test me or something far worse. When I got home, Robert was surrounded by papers, worry etched on his face. Well, was the doctor involved? I told him everything: how Michael had manipulated the doctor into creating a fake record, how he accessed our accounts, forged the insurance papers, and now called to invite us to dinner. "They're coming tonight." Robert's face went pale. "You think they suspect we know something?" Not sure, but he seemed unsettled when he learned the doctor didn't back his story. We looked at each other, both thinking the same thing. What were they planning for dinner? "We won't eat or drink anything they bring," Robert said quietly. "And one of us has to keep watch at all times." I nodded. "We need to record tonight if anything suspicious happens." Robert fetched his old digital recorder from his office. We tested it and hid it carefully in the dining room. That afternoon, I prepared the lasagna with a heavy heart. The thought of sitting at the same table with two people plotting to kill me made me sick. Every time I remembered those cold text messages discussing our deaths, it felt like my chest was being crushed. "How did it come to this?" I whispered as I set the table. "Where did we go wrong?" Robert just shook his head, his eyes clouded with pain. "I don't know, Susan. I thought I knew our son." At exactly 7 p.m., the doorbell rang. Robert and I exchanged one last look. The recorder was running under the table. Our plan was simple: act natural, observe every move, and if possible, make them slip up. I opened the door with a strained smile. Michael and Emily stood there, he holding a bottle of wine, she a box of my favorite chocolates. "Mom," he exclaimed, hugging me tightly. The embrace that once warmed me now made my skin crawl. How could he touch me while plotting my death? "It's been too long, Mom," he said, handing me the wine. "Brought something special for tonight." I smiled, glancing quickly at the label. An expensive brand that once would have impressed me, now only made me wonder if it was poisoned. Robert greeted them, his forced smile matching mine. He offered them water, coffee, juice, anything but the wine. "Hold on, Mom," Michael said, sitting down on the couch. "Let's save the wine for dinner." We made small talk for nearly half an hour. Work, the weather, the news, an atmosphere so fake it was suffocating. I noticed how often they exchanged glances. Emily watched my every move, while Michael kept asking about my daily routine, medication, and recent troubles. "So how was your appointment today, Mom?" he asked, his tone casual but probing. "Did the doctor order any more tests?" I kept my face composed. "It was routine, nothing to worry about." "That's strange," he said, frowning. "He told me he suspected early Alzheimer's." "Oh, really?" I replied, feigning surprise. "When did he say that?" Michael blinked, realizing his mistake. Last week, when I called him." "Called about what?" "About the times you've been forgetful lately." "What times?" I asked, directly. "I don't recall forgetting anything." He gave a dry laugh. "See? That's exactly what worries us. Don't you remember? Last week you forgot the neighbor's name and left the stove on for hours." Not a word of it was true. It was all part of their fabricated memory loss story. "Funny," I said calmly. "I talked to her yesterday, remembered her name just fine. And I haven't used the stove all week. I've been microwaving meals instead." Michael's smile faltered. "Let's eat," Robert interjected, breaking the tension. "Susan's lasagna smells wonderful." During dinner, the performance continued. I served the food while Robert discreetly switched the wine glasses. The plan was simple: pretend to drink the wine they brought, but actually use a different bottle we'd prepared in the kitchen. "Let's toast," Michael said, raising his glass. "To family and to good health." We all lifted our glasses, pretending to sip while I kept my eyes on them. Both drank normally. Maybe the wine wasn't poisoned, or maybe it wasn't time yet. "Susan," Emily spoke up, "Michael and I have been talking. We're worried about you and Robert living alone in such a big house." "That's right," Michael added. "Given everything lately, we think it might be better if you moved somewhere smaller, or we could move in to help take care of you." I could feel Robert stiffen beside me. So that was it, they wanted to move in to make it easier to strike. That's very thoughtful, I said evenly. But we're fine, aren't we, Robert? Perfectly fine, he said. In fact, we're planning a little trip soon to the coast. Michael glanced at Emily. A trip? Now? I don't think that's wise with your health and all. Everything's fine, I interrupted. We can go anytime we like. Emily smiled thinly, her eyes cold. Then, let me help you book it? No need. I cut her off. We can handle it ourselves. The rest of dinner was tense, every word laced with hidden meaning. When I brought out dessert cheesecake, Michael said, I talked to a lawyer. He said we can set up full power of attorney for me, just in case of emergencies. What kind of emergencies? Robert asked calmly. For example, if one of you had to be hospitalized, or if Mom's memory got worse. That way I could make medical and financial decisions for you. I looked at my son, the same face I once held in my hands, the face I'd photographed at his graduation, and all I saw was a stranger. No need for that, son, I said. We recently updated our paperwork and even changed the insurance beneficiaries. Michael froze. Changed how? Nothing major, just making sure everything's clear in case something happens. Emily placed a hand on his arm, as if to calm him. It's always good to review paperwork, she murmured. Your lawyer, Mark, the one you recommended, was very helpful, Robert lied smoothly. There was no Mark, but the mention threw them off balance. Near 10 p.m., Michael checked his watch. We should go. Early day tomorrow. I knew the real reason they needed time to rethink their plan. After a round of fake hugs and hollow goodbyes, they finally left. When the door closed, we both collapsed into chairs, drained. They're suspicious now, Robert whispered. They know something's changed. I nodded, picking up the recorder. We replayed the entire evening. Everything was clear. Michael and Emily were still determined, but our recent actions, visiting the doctor, changing bank access, mentioning the will, had made them cautious. They'll act soon, Robert said. They can't wait much longer. We need more proof, I replied. This recording helps, but it's not enough for the police. If we confront them now, they'll deny everything and be even more careful. That night, we double-checked the locks before bed. Still, I kept my phone by my pillow and propped a chair against the bedroom door. Precautions I never imagined I'd need against my own son. The next morning, the sound of a car stopping in front of the house jolted me awake. I ran to the window and saw Emily stepping out of a black SUV alone, at 8 a.m. On a workday when she should have been at the office. Robert, I called urgently. Emily's here. He jumped up, still half asleep. Where's Michael? I don't know. I'll answer the door, but stay close. I took a deep breath and tried to steady myself as I walked downstairs. Why would she come so early without warning? I opened the door before she could ring the bell. She looked surprised for a second, then quickly put on her polite smile. Susan, sorry for dropping by so early. I was on my way to work and thought I'd stop to drop off some documents Michael prepared for you. She held a yellow folder. What documents? I asked, not taking it. Just that power of attorney we mentioned last night, and a few articles about early-stage Alzheimer's treatments to help slow the progression. Michael's really worried about you. I stared at the folder in her hands. A trap, that's what it was. I could feel it. It probably contained forged papers with my signature, just like the fake insurance policy we had uncovered. Come inside, it'll be easier to go through them together, I said, keeping my tone calm. Emily hesitated for a moment. Actually, I'm already late for work. I just wanted to drop these off for you to read. It's fine, come in, I insisted, widening the door. Robert just made fresh coffee, 5 minutes won't hurt. Reluctantly, she stepped inside. I led her to the kitchen, where Robert sat pretending to be relaxed with his cup of coffee. Emily, what a nice surprise, he said warmly. She brought some documents for us to sign, I explained, emphasizing the word us. Robert understood instantly. Great, let's take a look. Emily's tension grew as Robert opened the folder and began flipping through the pages. I watched closely, her eyes followed every movement he made, her fingers tapping nervously on the table. Well, this is interesting, Robert said after a few minutes. This power of attorney gives Michael full control over our financial and medical decisions. Legally, it would leave us with almost no say in our own lives. It's just a precaution, Emily replied quickly. Because of your condition. What condition? I asked sharply. The memory lapses, the confusion, she stammered, realizing she was sinking. Michael said he noticed it a few times. Strange, I said. Dr. Parker didn't notice anything yesterday. Doctors can be wrong, she shot back. That's why it's good to get a second opinion. Robert set the folder down and pushed it toward her. Thanks, but we're not signing anything. In fact, we're already in the process of revoking last year's authorization. Emily's face froze for a second before she forced a polite smile. But Michael just wants to help. We understand, I said evenly, but we'd like to manage our own lives. She stood abruptly. I really have to go. I'm late. Of course, I said, walking her to the door. Tell Michael we'll call him to discuss this later. When the door closed, Robert looked at me. We both understood. They're speeding things up, he whispered. Exactly, I nodded. Which means we have to act now. We examined the documents Emily had brought. As we suspected, the power of attorney granted Michael absolute control over our assets, bank accounts, and even our medical decisions. There was also a voluntary admission form for a memory care center, essentially a nursing home for severe dementia patients with a blank signature line ready to be filled. They're not even pretending anymore, Robert said, his hands shaking. This is practically a death sentence. Good, I replied, surprising him. The clearer it is, the stronger our evidence. I photographed every page, made digital copies, and emailed them to Stella, the only friend I trusted completely outside the family. I briefly explained the situation and asked her to keep everything confidential. What do we do now? Robert asked. We need a plan. Clearly, they're moving faster. We decided to consult a legal expert, not the police yet, since we still lacked enough admissible evidence, but a lawyer who could help us protect both our assets and our lives. We chose a lawyer with no connection to Michael, Laura Bennett, an attorney specializing in family and criminal law. That afternoon, we went to her downtown office and told her everything: the messages, the bank withdrawals, the forged insurance, the altered medical records, and the papers Emily had delivered that morning. Laura listened carefully, taking detailed notes and asking precise questions. When we finished, she took a deep breath. You're dealing with several serious crimes here: forgery, fraud, attempted asset theft, and what appears to be a conspiracy to commit murder. Do we have enough to go to the police? Robert asked. The text messages are your strongest evidence, she said, but since you accessed them from Emily's phone without her consent, they might not hold up legally. Still, given the level of danger, I believe we can build a solid case. What's the first step? I asked. Right now, I'll prepare documents to revoke all previous authorizations and block the possibility of new ones unless both of you are present with an independent lawyer. I'll also notarize a statement confirming that you're both mentally competent and legally capable. Then, we'll file a formal complaint with all the evidence you have. We spent nearly 2 hours signing papers, giving statements, and mapping out the next steps. Laura was meticulous, missing nothing. Finally, she said, now comes the most important part: your safety. I strongly advise that you don't go home tonight. Robert and I exchanged uneasy looks. You think we're in immediate danger? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Based on what you've told me, yes. Emily's unexpected visit this morning shows they're rushing. I suggest you stay at a hotel for a few days, under a different name, until we get a protective order. We left her office with a thick folder and a growing sense of urgency. We went straight to the police station to file a formal report. The officer on duty, a middle-aged man named Charles Davis, listened to our story, his expression growing graver by the minute. This is extremely serious, he said. I'll assign investigators immediately and arrange discreet surveillance of your home. When Laura's recommendation about staying away was mentioned, he nodded. I agree. Don't return home yet, but let my team install hidden surveillance cameras first. If they come back, we'll have solid proof. We agreed, We would only go home briefly to pack while the police set up the equipment, then move to a hotel under aliases as advised. On the ride back, Robert stared silently out the taxi window. "Nearing home," he said quietly. "I never thought I'd live to fear my own son." I squeezed his hand, unable to find words. From a distance, our house looked as peaceful as ever, the windows, the little garden, the mailbox Michael had painted when he was 16. Hard to believe that the place that once symbolized love and safety was now the center of a murder plot. A team of plainclothes officers arrived in an unmarked car. They entered through the back door and installed tiny cameras in the living room, kitchen, hallway, and entrances. "The footage will stream directly to the station and be monitored around the clock," they explained. While they worked, Robert and I packed only essentials: a few changes of clothes, our medications, important documents. I avoided looking at the family photos on the walls. Every memory now felt poisoned by betrayal. "All set," one officer said. "The cameras are nearly invisible but high resolution. If anyone enters, we'll know instantly." He handed me a card with a number. "This is our direct line. Call immediately if anything happens." Just as we were about to leave, my phone rang. It was Michael. I looked at the officers. One nodded, signaling for me to answer naturally. "Hello. Mom, where are you?" "I stopped by the house and no one's here." My heart clenched. He was already there. "We're out shopping at the mall," I lied. "Needed to pick up a few things." "Oh, really?" "I just got worried, that's all. You two rarely go out without saying something." His tone was smooth. Practiced it made my stomach turn. "It was a last-minute decision. We'll be back soon." "Perfect. Because I've got a surprise for you. I'm waiting at the house." I froze. "A surprise?" "Yeah, I brought a bottle of your favorite wine. Thought we could sit down and talk about those papers Emily brought over this morning." One officer gestured for me to keep him talking. "That's so thoughtful, sweetheart. We'll be home in about half an hour." "Great. I'll be here." When I hung up, the officers immediately radioed another unit. "Suspect is inside the house. Maintain distance and keep surveillance active." The lead officer turned to us. "We'll let him move freely for now. Let's see what he does. If he plants anything poison, forged documents, whatever the cameras will catch it. That'll be irrefutable evidence." The plan made sense, but the thought of Michael walking through our home, possibly setting a trap, made my blood run cold. "What if he finds the cameras?" Robert asked. "Unlikely," the officer replied. "They're the size of shirt buttons, hidden in places no one would notice. Plus, we've got undercover units stationed around the neighborhood." We waited at a nearby cafe, tense and silent. Every minute felt like an hour. I couldn't stop picturing Michael inside the house, planting poison, hiding false evidence, rummaging through our belongings to find something he could use against us. After about 40 minutes, the officer received a call, nodded several times, then turned to us. "We've got something. Something big." We rushed back to the station and were led into a monitoring room lined with screens. Lieutenant Davis was there, reviewing footage from our home. "Mr. and Mrs. Miller, you'll want to see this," he said gravely. On the screen, I saw Michael enter the kitchen carrying 2 plastic bags. He looked around carefully, making sure no one was there, then began working methodically. He took out several pill bottles and mixed their contents into our medication in the cabinet. Then he opened a bottle of wine, the surprise he'd mentioned, and poured a small amount of white powder into it, shaking it thoroughly before sealing it again. Finally, he pulled a small device from his bag and attached it under the table. "Looks like a microphone or a hidden camera," one officer noted. I covered my mouth, unable to speak. Watching my own son calmly preparing our deaths, it was a pain beyond words. "We have enough evidence now," Lieutenant Davis said. "I'm authorizing the immediate arrest of Michael Miller and Emily Miller." "What about what he put in the medicine cabinet?" Robert asked, voice trembling. "We'll send it to the lab, but it appears to be high-dose medication that could cause serious harm. The powder in the wine seems to be a strong sedative." Davis placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Mrs. Miller, I know this is heartbreaking, but you need to understand your son directly tried to kill you both. If you had gone home and drunk that wine today. I broke down in tears. The truth hit like a physical blow. It was no longer about messages or suspicions, it was real. I had just seen my son poisoning us in the same kitchen where he once ate family dinners. "What happens now?" Robert asked, holding me tightly. "We'll arrest them both today," the lieutenant replied. "With this footage, they don't stand a chance." He assured us we were safe but advised us to stay at the hotel for a few more days. We had barely left the station when a female officer rushed over. "Lieutenant Davis. Update: Michael and Emily are currently at the Millers' residence. They seem agitated, possibly looking for them." Davis immediately gave the order. "A tactical unit. Get ready. Move now." Then he turned to us. "They've likely realized something's wrong since you didn't return as planned. It's time to make the arrests." "Can we come?" I heard myself ask, half terrified, half determined. Part of me wanted to run away and never see them again. But another part, the stronger part, needed to see it end. Davis hesitated, then nodded. "You can ride in the patrol car, but stay inside and don't intervene under any circumstances." On the way there, my heart pounded so hard it hurt. I couldn't stop thinking, how had my son become someone capable of plotting his parents' murder? When we arrived, several police cars were already surrounding the house. Over the radio, we heard that Michael and Emily were still inside, arguing loudly. "They know something's wrong," an officer said. "They've been calling the parents' phones non-stop." Indeed, my phone had rung multiple times. It was Michael, but I ignored it as instructed. Lieutenant Davis coordinated through his radio, calm and firm. "All units ready. 3, 2, 1, go." The front door burst open. Michael ran out, Emily right behind him, both carrying backpacks, eyes darting around frantically before heading toward a car in the driveway. "They're trying to flee," Robert whispered. Officers swarmed from every direction. "Police! Hands up!" The shouts echoed across the street. I saw Michael's face freeze, Emily's eyes wide with panic. For a moment, he looked like he might run, but realizing there was no escape, he slowly raised his hands. They were cuffed and led to separate patrol cars. It was over in seconds, like a scene from a movie. Lieutenant Davis approached our car. "It's done. Their under arrest charges include conspiracy to commit murder, forgery, and fraud. We've seized the wine and the medication as evidence." Through the window, I saw Michael being led away, his hands cuffed behind him, sitting in the back of a squad car. His eyes met mine for a brief moment, no remorse, only anger and disbelief at being caught. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel triumph. Only a hollow emptiness, as if a piece of my soul had died with the son I once loved. When we returned to the police station, we signed additional statements. In Michael and Emily's backpacks, officers found undeniable evidence: pills matching the ones planted in our home, another jar of the same white powder used in the wine, plane tickets for an overseas flight scheduled for the next day, and several $1,000s in cash. "They were preparing to flee," Lieutenant Davis said. "The plan was clearly to poison you both, then disappear before anyone noticed." Robert held my hand tightly. Each detail felt like another knife twisting deeper into my heart. "Do you want to see him?" Davis asked, once the paperwork was done. "They're being held separately." Robert shook his head. He wasn't ready, and I understood. But inside me rose a strange urge, a need to see my son one last time. "I want to see Michael," I said, and the room fell silent. Davis led me down a cold corridor to a small room with a table and 2 chairs. "We'll be watching through the glass. If you feel uncomfortable, just signal, and we'll stop immediately." I nodded, sitting down and trying to steady my trembling hands. A few minutes later, the door opened. Michael walked in, handcuffed, his hair disheveled, his face pale. He looked 10 years older than he had that morning. The officer seated him across from me, then stepped outside. We stared at each other in silence for nearly a minute. "I was set up," he said first, his voice low and bitter. "It's all a misunderstanding." "Stop lying," I replied calmly. "It's over." He looked away, jaw clenched. "What do you want me to say?" "I want to know why. Why did you do this to us?" Michael let out a cold laugh. You wouldn't understand. Try me, I said softly. I have all the time in the world to listen. He looked straight at me, his eyes colder than I'd ever seen them. Money, Mom. It's always about money. You and Dad had everything, a house, pensions, investments, insurance, and yet you did nothing with it. You live this dull, frugal life, as if you'll live forever. His words stabbed deep, but I stayed composed. So that's your reason for killing us? The idea was Emily's, he said flatly. She works in finance, knows exactly what you two are worth, and got tired of waiting. Why wait decades to inherit when we could live the life we deserve now? That's what she said. And you agreed? He shrugged. At first, no. But she convinced me it was for the best for everyone. You're old, you'll get sick eventually. I just wanted to set you free. I hissed through my teeth. Killing your parents is setting them free? You wouldn't have felt pain, he said, almost casually. Just drink the wine, fall asleep, and never wake up. Peaceful, no suffering. Like the bottle you brought today? I asked. He went silent. After a moment, he muttered, How did you find out? The texts on Emily's phone, right? That idiot technician. Yes, the texts, but even without them, we would have found out eventually. You're not as clever as you think, Michael. He straightened, the cuffs clinking. So what now? You're going to send your own son to prison? I met his gaze. You planned to kill us, stage an accident, and call it mercy. The only people who'd suffer were us. He stared back with empty eyes. At least I'd finally have the life I deserve, I repeated slowly. The life you deserve. Then I looked into the face of the child I once loved, searching for anything regret. Humanity, but there was nothing left. I don't recognize you anymore, I whispered. The son we raised, loved, and protected all these years. Where did he go? For a fleeting moment, emotion flickered across his face. I'm still here. I've just grown up. I'm tired of waiting my turn. I stood up, meeting his eyes. You'll have the best lawyer money can buy. Your father and I will pay for that. It's the last thing we'll ever do for you as parents. But don't expect anything more, Michael. What you've done can never be undone. I turned to leave, but he called after me. You don't understand. I just wanted a real chance to live. I stopped, glanced back at him one final time. We gave you every chance, education, love, support. What to do with that was your choice. And this is what you chose. I walked out of the interrogation room, each step heavier than the last. In the hallway, Robert was waiting, his eyes red, his face streaked with tears. What did he say? He asked, his voice trembling. The truth, I answered. It was all about money. Our deaths were his way to have the life he thought he deserved. Robert closed his eyes, his face collapsing under unbearable pain. How did we not see it? How did we let him become this? I had no answer. That question haunted me too. How could two parents who had guided their child through every stage of life, taught him right from wrong, celebrated his every success, raise someone cold enough to plan their murder? We left the station in silence and went back to our hotel. Robert barely spoke, lost in thought. I knew he was replaying every memory of Michael, trying to pinpoint where things had gone wrong. At the hotel, a small but quiet place downtown, we asked for a room with 2 beds. Neither of us said it aloud, but we both understood we needed space that night. The pain was too personal, too deep to share, even with the person I'd spent my entire life beside. I lay down, exhausted, but couldn't sleep. Images of Michael as a child overlapped with the image of him pouring poison into the wine, blending into a waking nightmare I couldn't escape. When I finally drifted off, my sleep was restless, filled with disjointed dreams, me running endlessly through a hallway, chased by shadows wearing my son's face. I woke with a start to the sound of my phone ringing. It was Lieutenant Davis. Mrs. Miller, I'm sorry to call so early, but we need you to come to the station immediately. There's been a new development. His serious tone made my stomach twist. What happened? It's better if I explain in person. Please come as soon as you can. I woke Robert and explained briefly. 30 minutes later, we were at the station. Davis was waiting, his face tense. "Thank you for coming so quickly. I have important news." "What is it?" Robert asked. "Emily Miller has requested a plea deal in exchange for her testimony. She's agreed to testify against Michael." My throat tightened. What did she say? According to her statement, the original plan was just financial, moving money, gaining control of assets. "The idea of killing you only came up a few months ago when Michael started fearing you might find out." Robert squeezed my hand. "And," Davis continued, "Emily also claimed that Michael planned to kill her afterward to keep all the money for himself." My mouth fell open. My son planned to kill his own wife? That's what Emily says. She found messages between him and another woman, discussing how they'd split the money once Emily was taken care of. I closed my eyes, struggling to process this new layer of cruelty. Not only had my son planned to murder us, he was willing to destroy anyone in his way. "There's more," Davis said, his tone even graver. "Forensic results show that the powder contained a dangerous toxin capable of causing cardiac arrest, and we have evidence he'd already been testing it." "Testing?" Robert repeated, stunned. "Hair samples from you, Mrs. Miller, contained traces of the same toxin, likely administered in small doses over time to mimic natural symptoms. That explains the fatigue, insomnia, and dizziness you've experienced. They weren't from age or stress, they were early signs of poisoning." The room spun around me. I gripped the edge of the table to keep from collapsing as the horror sank in. My son had been poisoning me for months. "How long?" I asked weakly. "At least 3 months," he said. I thought back to every headache, every dizzy spell, every sleepless night I'd blamed on age. It had been him, my son. "What about Mr. Miller?" Davis turned to Robert. "I feel fine," Robert said quietly. "Even so," Davis replied, "I suggest you get tested too. If he started with Susan, you may have been next." We left the station feeling worse than ever. The thought that Michael hadn't just planned but had already begun was unbearable. Every meal, every cup of coffee he'd brought, every pill I'd taken on his reminder any of them could have been part of his plan. "We have to go to the hospital," Robert said. "We need to make sure you're okay." At the hospital, after explaining everything, we were rushed into testing. The doctors took blood and hair samples and ran multiple exams, keeping us under observation all day. The results confirmed it. Traces of oleander were found in my system, though not yet at levels high enough to cause permanent damage. Robert was completely clear, meaning Michael had focused on me first, probably because of my cancer history, knowing my death would seem natural. "You're very lucky," the doctor said. "We caught it in time. The toxin hasn't caused irreversible harm. With treatment and rest, you'll make a full recovery." Lucky, what a bitter word. I was lucky to have discovered that my son was killing me before he succeeded. In the days that followed, the case spread everywhere. News outlets ran headlines about the son who poisoned his parents for money. It was on every TV screen, every social feed. Reporters swarmed the hotel, calling non-stop. Everyone wanted our story, but I refused them all. Our pain was not a spectacle for others to consume. Attorney Laura became our spokesperson, handling all the legal matters and protecting our privacy. She announced that Michael was being charged with attempted premeditated murder, with additional charges for poisoning and fraud. If convicted, he could spend decades in prison. A week after the arrests, we finally had the strength to return home. The police had removed all surveillance equipment but kept the alarm system connected directly to the station. "Just in case," Lieutenant Davis said. Walking through that front door was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Every room carried memories, some beautiful, others now unbearable. In the living room, family photos lined the wall. Michael, on his first day of school, Michael holding his swim trophy, Michael and Emily on their wedding day. Once symbols of happiness, now they felt like ghosts mocking us. Robert walked slowly around the house, touching each frame, each object, as if trying to reconcile the past with the present. "We have to move," he said softly. "I can't live here, not in the place where it all happened." I nodded silently. Our home, once a haven, was now drenched in betrayal and fear. That night, lying side by side in the dark, holding hands, Robert asked, Will we ever understand this? How our son became what he did? I answered honestly, I don't know. Maybe some things never have answers. Maybe some people just choose the wrong path, no matter how they're raised. I talked to him so many times, Susan, Robert whispered, about honesty, responsibility, family. Why wasn't it enough? I squeezed his hand. Maybe for some people, nothing is ever enough. Maybe the emptiness inside them can never be filled. We stayed silent for a long time. Finally, Robert asked, "What do we do now? How do we go on after all this?" That was the question in my heart, too. How do you rebuild when the foundation has been shattered by your own blood? How do you ever trust again when the one who betrayed you was the person you loved most? One day at a time, I whispered. We started over somewhere new, leaning on each other to survive. In the weeks that followed, we focused on staying safe and steadying ourselves as the case moved forward. Emily reached a deal with the prosecutor's office, agreeing to testify against Michael in exchange for a reduced sentence. Michael, however, denied all major charges, claiming it was just a family misunderstanding and that the evidence had been fabricated. 2 months after his arrest, we received a letter from prison. Robert wanted to burn it without opening it, but something inside me urged me to read what my son had to say. The letter was short, written in handwriting I would recognize anywhere. Mom and Dad, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to say this. Everything I did out of love. Yes, I wanted money, freedom, but I also wanted to spare you from the pain of aging, of dependence, of losing dignity. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know what I did is unforgivable, but please understand it wasn't out of hatred, it was out of ambition. Maybe it was greed, but also a twisted kind of love. Someday, when you're ready, I hope we can see each other again. I read the letter 3 times, trying to find some sincerity, some trace of the child I once knew, but all I saw was manipulation, another attempt to justify the unforgivable. Out of love, I murmured, folding the paper. He wanted to kill us, out of love. Robert read it too, then shook his head sadly. He still doesn't understand, and maybe he never will. I placed the letter in a drawer and didn't respond. Maybe one day, when the pain isn't so raw, when I can think of Michael without being torn between love and betrayal, I'll find the words to write back. But not now, not while the wound is still bleeding. The following months passed in a blur of court hearings, therapy sessions, and the slow, painful process of rebuilding a life. We sold the house for far less than it was worth, just to be done with it, and moved into the small apartment downtown. It was simpler, but at least it wasn't haunted by memories. Michael's trial was scheduled 3 months later. The prosecution had an airtight case: text messages, video footage from our house, toxicology reports confirming prolonged poisoning, Emily's testimony, and the forged documents. Conviction seemed inevitable. Still, the thought of testifying against our own son terrified me. How could I stand in court and tell the world that my child had planned to kill us? How could I look him in the eyes while my words determined the rest of his life? We spoke about it many times with our therapist, Dr. Martha, whom we had been seeing weekly since everything happened. You are not responsible for his actions, she always reminded us. Your testimony isn't betrayal, it's truth. But he's still our son, Robert said. No matter what, he's our son. Yes, she replied softly, and he's also an adult who chose a criminal path. Both truths can exist at once. One afternoon, while unpacking a few unopened boxes in the new apartment, I found an old photo album. I sat on the floor, turning the pages. Pictures of Michael as a baby, a schoolboy, a teenager, always smiling, always surrounded by our love. In one photo, he was about 5, holding a drawing of 3 stick figures under a sun, with the crooked words, "For the best mom in the world." I burst into tears. Where had that little boy gone? When had he turned into someone capable of planning our deaths? Robert found me crying on the floor, clutching the album. He sat beside me and put his arm around my shoulders. We stayed like that, grieving the child we had lost, not to death, but to the darkness that had consumed his soul. The following week, Stella, my friend from the library, the one who had helped me collect evidence against Michael, came by unexpectedly. She carried a stack of old newspapers. "Susan, Robert," she said, her voice trembling between excitement and concern. "I found something. You need to see this." It was from a small southern town, dated 5 years earlier. The front page read, "Elderly man dies under mysterious circumstances. Niece inherits entire estate. Police suspect poisoning but close the case due to lack of evidence." I frowned. "What is this?" Stella pointed to a photo beside the article. The young woman being interviewed was unmistakably Emily, years younger, but clearly her. Before moving here and changing her name, she had been Carolina Sanders. The man who died was her uncle, who had raised her after her parents passed away. Robert skimmed the clippings. She inherited everything. Police suspected poisoning but couldn't prove it. Exactly. Stella nodded. And do you know what the suspected toxin was? Oleander. A chill ran down my spine. "The same toxin found in your system, Susan," she said. "The same one Michael mixed into the wine." The truth was cruel and unmistakable. Emily wasn't just an accomplice, she was the mastermind. She'd done it before, knew how, knew the dosage, and had led Michael down the same bloody path. "Why bring this to us now?" Robert asked. "Because her deal with the prosecution is about to be finalized," Stella explained. "She might get only a few years, even though she may have killed before. It isn't fair." We immediately took the discovery to our lawyer, Laura. She contacted the prosecutor's office at once. The investigation into Emily's uncle's death was reopened, and police began examining the possibility of additional victims. Within weeks, her plea deal was suspended. In her apartment, officers found a detailed journal describing her plan to kill us, notes about her uncle's poisoning, and even her intention to eliminate Michael afterward to keep all the assets. The full picture was more horrifying than we could have imagined. Emily was a sociopath who had manipulated Michael into becoming her pawn, then planned to dispose of him once she got what she wanted. When Michael heard the news during the pretrial hearing, he broke down completely. His attorney said that he finally understood the extent of her manipulation, though it didn't erase his crimes. That was when Robert and I decided to visit Michael in prison. Not to forgive him, it was far too soon for that, if forgiveness was even possible, but to face the truth and try to understand how everything had gone so wrong. The prison was cold and heavy with silence. We followed the guard through a long hallway to the visitation room. When the door opened, Michael walked in, hands cuffed, wearing an orange jumpsuit. My chest tightened. He looked thinner, paler, with deep shadows under his eyes, so much older than 35. The moment he saw us, tears streamed down his face. "Mom, Dad," he rasped. "We're here," Robert said simply, sitting across from him. There was nothing more to say, the distance between us felt infinite. Still, being there, offering a sliver of human warmth, mattered to him and to us. "I'm sorry," he said after a moment. "For everything. I know it means nothing now, but I had to say it. I noticed the bandage on his wrist. Why did you try to hurt yourself?" He lowered his eyes. "Because I finally understood. Not just the plan, the lies, the manipulation, but the pain I caused you. I destroyed everything, and I know I can't fix it." For the first time since all this began, I saw something real in his eyes, not self-pity or denial, but genuine awareness of guilt. "You're right," Robert said quietly but firmly. "Some things can't be fixed. But that doesn't mean you give up." "What's left if I don't?" Michael asked. "Life," I answered. "An imperfect, painful life behind these walls, but still life. Still a chance, however small, to do something right." We stayed only about half an hour. We didn't promise to return. We didn't talk about forgiveness. We just said goodbye, leaving behind the faint outline of a fragile hope for the future. On the way back, Robert was silent for a long time, then asked, "Do you think we did the right thing?" "I don't know," I said, "but I don't regret going." 5 years after discovering the murder plot, Robert and I celebrated our 45th wedding anniversary. We didn't throw a big party, just a cozy dinner at home with a few friends who had stood by us through the storm. Watching Robert tell stories that made everyone laugh, I realized something important. We had found joy again, not the same joy as before, but one deeper, quieter, and more grateful. We carried scars that would never fade, but we were alive, and we chose to keep believing in the light after the darkness. We had faced the worst life could bring, and were still here, together. Michael remained in prison, where he would stay for many years. After his suicide attempt, he seemed to find a new purpose, late, but real. He began studying law through an inmate education program, hoping someday to help other prisoners. We visited occasionally, not often, but enough to maintain a fragile thread of connection. Emily, meanwhile, was serving her sentence in a maximum security prison, refusing all contact with us. From what we heard, she still denied everything, blaming everyone but herself. As for us, we learned to carry our story without letting it define us. When we met new people, the truth eventually surfaced. Our corner of the suburbs wasn't large, and the case had once shocked the community, but most people showed compassion and respect for the pain we endured. Sometimes, I still wake up in the middle of the night, remembering that moment in the repair shop when Tom turned the phone screen toward me and my world collapsed. Sometimes Robert still dreams of the night Michael carried out his plan. But those shadows come less often now, replaced by the light of our present, by small joys, new friends, rediscovered hobbies, and the love that survived the unimaginable. On the night of our 45th anniversary, after everyone had left, Robert and I sat on our balcony, looking up at the starry sky. "Who would have thought," he said, taking my hand, "after everything, we'd still be here, the survivors." I smiled and squeezed his hand. "Not just surviving," Robert whispered, "but living." He was right. We were no longer just existing to endure. We were truly living, fully and gratefully. Looking back on that fateful afternoon at the phone repair shop, I no longer see only tragedy. I see growth born from pain. I didn't choose this path, nor the suffering that came with it, but I accepted the challenge to rebuild, to find meaning again, and to keep loving even after breaking apart. Maybe that's the greatest victory of all, to not let hatred, bitterness, or fear define you. Every day, I choose compassion, courage, and hope, even knowing how dark the world can be. And have you ever had to rise from a wound you thought would never heal? I would love to hear your story. Share it in the comments, and if you'd like to keep walking with me through these journeys of courage, love, and healing, stay here. Every week, we'll learn a little more together about how people still find ways to love, to trust, and to begin again, even after being broken.